For your viewing pleasure, this ship has been constructed to be perfectly symmetrical. My iron mines are starting to peter out, and the raw amounts remaining aren't encouraging, but thankfully Vulcanus is the land of plenty, where iron literally spews from the ground unbidden. This thing goes a little too fast for its turrets and ammo factories to keep up, but around the time I panic and hit the full stop, we've apparently already arrived. Welcome to Vulcanus. It may literally look like hell, but this is unironically what paradise looks like to an engineer. Vulcanus is all about two things:
iron and copper.
There's a functionally unlimited amount of it here. There are also no biters to worry about, so it's my favorite planet by default. However, there is also no water. Vulcanus is focused around using liquids as intermediates to plate production in foundries. The lava is absolutely infinite, although you need calcite to turn it into liquid metals, and foundries to actually utilize those liquid metals. Foundries also get a huge bonus to productivity and work way faster than anything else you have unlocked at this point, so you really want to use them wherever possible. Calcite isn't needed in high quantities, and basically anywhere it can be applied, you can think of it as a force multiplier to thermodynamics. Despite it just being, like, goddamn limestone, this stuff can not only work as a catalyst to turning raw materials into dramatically more intermediates than using any other process, it also trivializes thruster fuel production late in the game. We like calcite here. It's broken. Unfortunately, in order to use calcite, you need foundries, and foundries take tungsten carbide. Tungsten is a unique resource to Vulcanus along with calcite, and the ore patches are being protected by giant worms with enormous health pools, super fast health regen, and crazy damage resistances. But you can scrape together a bit of carbide from the rocks, which is enough to start. The ground also spits out sulfuric acid for free in some places, and there's a cheap recipe to convert it to steam, which you can use for power. There's also a basic form of coal liquefaction that doesn't need steam, and you can... Anyway, this recipe is pretty trash, but it lets you produce just a little bit of oil product without needing to have brought some heavy oil with you. Proper coal liquefaction is locked behind Vulcanus science, however, so even if you did bring heavy oil barrels through space, you still have to start here. Not a big fan of a completely transitional technology that becomes pointless later. It's exactly the same problem as basic oil processing. You know, in space exploration, basic oil processing actually created more petroleum per liter of crude oil. So, if you just needed petrol, it was still more efficient to use that recipe. You still mostly wanted to use advanced, though, in order to get the byproduct oils for production of lube and other things. It's all temporary builds until I have foundries and big mining drills automated. But you can't automate foundries without getting access to a tungsten ore patch, and that means killing a worm. Eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that I shipped along with me 4 reactors and a stack of uranium fuel cells. I never planned to make nuclear power on Vulcanus, there simply isn't enough water here. I had something different in mind. Before we get to that, I've just realized that my space platform is slowly dying. I forgot to send up repair packs, and its iron plate production is insufficient to maintain its asteroid defense. If I leave it parked in Vulcanus orbit, it's going to waste away. But I can't do anything to help it from here yet, and probably won't for a few hours, so I take a deep breath and send it back to Navis. it beats having to rebuild the entire thing. And now back to the worm. You can't ship nuclear bombs. Despite being able to carry 30 in my ammo pouch, they're too heavy to launch. It's one of many contrived design decisions to force you to play the intended way. Never mind that the actual application of nuclear bombs outside of Navis are incredibly limited, and they take a staggering 100 U-235 now instead of just 30, so forget about it. But a nuclear reactor above 800 C explodes with the force of a nuclear bomb and only needs uranium fuel cells.
That might have been over the line, JC.
I need to reproduce the main bus on Vulcanus so that I can kickstart production, but the new recipe chains take a while to wrap my head around. The absolute size of a foundry makes direct insertion for things like copper wire less appealing. One thing that I need several thousand of, but didn't know to bring with me, is electric motors, a core ingredient of big mining drills, and a bit of a pain to automate down here at the moment. But thankfully the NX-01 is back up to snuff, and by adding just 2 more furnaces and artificially extending the length of its iron and ammo belts with these squigglies, I settle on a design that can produce plates faster than it consumes while in Vulcanus orbit. How fast you can prop up a new planet is largely dependent on the strength of your exports from previous planets. It's not too bad here because resources on Vulcanus are just so abundant, but suffice it to say that the time that I saved by leaving Navis without properly shoring up my production lines is now being paid for in full by having to set it up on Vulcanus from almost scratch instead. But there's no biters here, so I'm happy with this outcome. Have you ever tried to make inserters drop items on belts symmetrically? Everybody knows that inserters place items on the far side, but if both sides of the belt are the far side, then the lane is actually picked based on relative direction, and I can't say I've committed the pattern to memory. I think it always drops on the right side from the hand's perspective. So, in the interest of aesthetics, we get this. I'm not going to ship in too much from Navis because the resource patches back in that old base don't have much more life in them, but some electric motors will speed things up substantially. Here's an interesting speed bump. There's no copper ore in space at this level of tech. That means you can't produce repair packs in space. Oh, damn it. I built over my resource dump and now I can't unbuild the platforming until I deal with all this crap it's trying to dump into space. Trying to deconstruct something with asteroids on it shoves it into the cargo bay, and asteroids don't stack, so it fills up. The solution? Dump it all down to Navis instead. The NX-01 is very pretty, but for raw function it's actually pretty pathetic. Insufficient ammo and fuel production. It can just about outpace ammo production to keep itself alive while in Vulcanus orbit, but while moving, it can only live as long as its buffered resources allow. Down on Vulcanus, I've finally got a line of tungsten coming in, but it's really slow. I just got refreshed with some supplies from Navis, so it's time for some fast and dirty automation to make things that I need to make the actual base, with a specific emphasis on electric motors. I would just use a bunch of standard electric mining drills to pump up my tungsten production, but those can't actually mine tungsten as a resource. Bit of a feedback loop. You need tungsten to make the drills, you need the drills to mine the tungsten. You're stuck to hand gathering to start. As a rule, your factory does not make science or rockets. It makes red circuits. And you'll never cease to be amazed at just how many My mistake. The red circuits are the backbone of any base. Underbuild red chips and you've underbuilt your base. They take plastic though, and the petrochem supply I have set up is pretty pathetic. I have a steady trickle of foundries, big mining drills, and other sundries ready, so I begin designing a foundry smelting array. This is what Factorio is all about. Looking at the recipes, the buildings, the belts, and then making an easy, repeatable system that has room to scale up. And preferably also do it in as little space with as little resources as possible, while also ratioing production appropriately. It takes me a while to figure out how many molten iron foundries I need to saturate belts with all the things I need, and spoilers, I get it wrong. But in the meantime, I need more space. The starting area of Vulcanus is 1/3 cliffs, 1/3 flatlands, and 1/3 lava. I need to capture more of the flatlands from the worms before I can properly scale up. And that means another nuclear landmine. Excellent. Wait, I didn't actually capture the territory? I captured the territory behind the territory that the bug was in. Well, apparently worms can move into each other's territories, and there's no way to know if you're killing the right one. That's stupid, so I'm reloading. There, that was the right one. Nuclear landmines are expensive because they take like 5 space rockets each, on top of the cost of the reactors. But someone online told me that you can make do with piercing ammo and turrets, which you can make on-site. So I slapped together a little turret and ammo factory to give that a shot. Suffice it to say, I disagree. Uranium ammo might do it, but if you're shipping in uranium ammo from Navis to do this, you might as well just ship in nuclear landmines. A rocket can only hold a piddling 25 uranium ammo, and you'd need like 1,000. Oh, also I installed the mod that shows the planet you're currently orbiting in space. If nothing else, it removes a lot of confusion. I really feel like this needs to be rolled into main branch with a higher resolution. With more space cleared out and a buffer of foundries to work with, I tear down the temporary build and bust out the calculator. I'm looking at producing 64 steel foundries, 32 iron foundries, 5 stick foundries, and 9 gear foundries, in order to make a nice and saturated main bus. In retrospect, on-site production of intermediates per production chain using molten iron as the intermediate is probably superior to using a main bus of belts. But this is what I know. I forget the exact details, but in the process of calculation I get the demand and supply backwards and thus end up making something like twice as many molten iron foundries as I actually needed. But the build is compact and the overflow can be shunted to expansions, so I'm not broken up about it. The stone byproduct can be used to make concrete, which we need for a variety of purposes, and after constructing this enormous facility I remember...
Iron and copper.
Oh yeah, copper exists. Thankfully you can pretty much copy the production chain and don't have to worry about steel. That's the alarm I set to tell me when steam production at the power plant is being overtaken by demand. Yeah, something like 300 foundries was too much for one acid neutralization plant to power. Who would have thought? Actually, the plant isn't even the bottleneck, it just needs more pump jacks. Normally you'd want to avoid putting copper wire on belts wherever possible because copper wire is decompressed copper plates. But the productivity bonus on cast wire is too good to pass up, and I'm already glad I overbuilt molten iron, because I can slap an additional iron plate foundry to feed specifically green circuits. Now it's time for proper supplies. Belts, splitters, and undergrounds. All craftable through foundries. And I plan ahead to make the build compatible with turbo-grade belts once I unlock them. You can't make inserters in foundries, unfortunately. I have to scale up power production because making all those belts is actually firing up the foundries pretty hard. Here's a tip. If your power production relies on there being power in the network in the first place, put all sections of the power production on an isolated power network with a battery backup and a redundant power supply like solar. Solar is great for building an uninterruptible power supply for a power plant because it basically cannot stop working due to logistical failure. And then we're back to petrochem. It's pretty hard to get a good amount of fluids going with just basic liquefaction. So it takes something like 24 refineries to feed just these 2 plastic machines. This will be solved once proper liquefaction can be invented via exported science. And the red chips can go on top of the green circuits. Now that we actually have blue belts, I want to retrofit everything to them. I designed the smelting array around them so we can't even meet production targets until it all goes through. It's going to seriously cut my plastic production, but I need rocket fuel. This base can only grow so large before cliff explosives become a necessity, and that means shifting from domestic product to export. That means rocket fuel, blue chips, and LDS. The fuel and chips aren't really much cheaper to produce here, but LDS have a foundry recipe. It still needs plastic, but it can be cast from molten copper at a much faster speed and a cheaper price. That just leaves making the science itself. That means mashing tungsten carbide and tungsten plates together and shipping them off via rocket to Navis. The science and the rockets are easy enough, but I have to make the silo, and that means more electric engines. I'd torn down my electric engine factory to mine coal for petrochemicals, and the time has come to build it properly. I slap down the first rocket silo and forget to fill it with prod modules before it's fully assembled, and send up my first shipment of orange soda. I've often asked people which science pack they'd prefer to drink if they could, and metallurgical science is definitely the winner for me.
Well done.
Beautiful. Now that I finally have cliff explosives and coal liquefaction researched, I do the only thing an insane person would do, and play nothing but Elite Dangerous for a month and a half because I have an addiction for making progress bars go up, and I'm not sorry. Hey, I made Elite Dangerous videos before I made Factorio videos, you know. So now the target is cliff explosives. That takes sulfur to produce. And despite being swimming in sulfuric acid, I actually have to first convert the acid to steam, and then use the steam to melt coal to create petrochemicals, and then reduce the petroleum to sulfur. And yes, that actually isn't extracting sulfur from the acid. You can't do that. You're not allowed. I feel like the steam recipe should create some sulfur salts or something. Coal liquefaction means increasing our coal output. The steam is basically free from acid neutralization. Also, we need to ensure that we always have a small stockpile of heavy oil, and that just means setting up a pump to only flow out of the heavy oil buffer tank when it has more than 10K. Well, now that simple coal liquefaction exists, you could just keep one refinery on the old system and feed the rest, but that's inefficient. Because space is still kinda tight and I don't want to build ahead of my main bus, I get possessed by a spaghetti demon and try to fit the entire process chain for plastic and cliff explosives production between the coal drills and the refineries. Explosives is simple enough. The sulfur and explosives can share the water pipe. I don't know why I even thought I could fit barrel and grenade production in this 4-space-wide gap. I prop up a single iron plate foundry to feed it, and then feed only one lane of the undergrounds with it. Bring in coal from a second line of undergrounds in the opposite direction, and then output the grenades on the second lane of the undergrounds carrying the plates. Once the grenades are prepared, I realize I need to make barrels. I can't think of an elegant way to get steel or barrels here from outside, but iron plates can be forged into steel, and they are already right here, so I continue the underground line and feed it through 3 furnaces in series before finally outputting into a barrel assembler. What am I doing with my life? Why have I done this? No sane person would ever build something like this, and the worst part is that it works. You don't need a steady production of cliff explosives. If you have one assembler working away on it constantly, it'll keep up with demand, at least after the initial spree where you burn like 2,000 in a matter of hours. Now that cliff explosives are solved, I can clear large swaths of land for building, and more importantly, power generation. The slow trickle of metallurgical science is all you truly need from Vulcanus, although foundries and greenbelts and cliff explosives are also nice. But since I hate biters, I want Vulcanus to be the backbone of my production. I'm going to make this place make everything. If I want to stand up a new space platform, I want it to be from here. So it's time to invest. Prod modules, greenbelts, and beacons for everybody. At least where I can fit them. Unfortunately, the retrofit is over 8,000 greenbelts, and I'm making less than 100 a minute, so that's gonna be a while. I also tune up the NX-01 a bit, but its symmetrical splendor isn't long for the world. If I want to ship product from Vulcanus regularly, it's going to be a much slower, much fatter, much more robust platform with a lot more guns. I bring in some molten copper from some wire foundries and then construct an at-scale platform factory by pulling steel from the main bus. And as it turns out, the steel production needed for that actually taxes my foundries enough that they almost choke on stone byproduct. Apparently 3 bulk inserters fed by greenbelts wasn't enough. My mistake. Concrete production still has priority access to stone, so I'm not too sad to dunk it in the thousands. Oh god, that's the low steam alarm. I never really thought about my sulfuric acid production rate, but it turns out I just hit the upper limit of what this well can provide. Speed modules and a bit of energy storage on the well's private electrical network can fix it for now, but there's another well nearby that I want to capture. That means more landmines. I don't immediately end up using this new well because I get easily distracted, but I'll need it at some point. Likewise, the coal patch is starting to run down. People like to say that Vulcanus is a paradise where everything is free, and while that's mostly true, you start to run through coal pretty quickly due to having to rely on liquefaction for all your petrochemicals. So I want to capture another coal mine as well. It takes me like 10 minutes to find another coal patch, but 3.6 million ought to last for a while. Tired of shipping in reactors from Navis, I set up a machine to make them on site. Then I remember, I have artillery now. Apparently nuclear landmines don't count as killing a demolisher, so only now that I'm basically done with Vulcanus do I actually get the achievement for slaying one. Again, this coal mine is for later, and I don't immediately route it into the main system. I automate some more basic supplies like combinators off the main bus, realize that Navis is basically entirely out of iron, and get the silos ready to construct the new platform. This platform is going to be slow, fat, and dumb, so say hello to the Mondor. Standing up a new platform in Vulcanus orbit kinda sucks because it's perpetually bombarded by medium asteroids, which means you have to be prepared to defend it while building it. My rocket fuel production isn't nearly enough for this many silos, so I shove another ribbon-shaped factory into the petrochem facility in the space left by the depleted coal miners. Pointlessly complex, just the way I like it. My space science just halted. It took 20 hours to become a problem, but I guess I never went back and set up the Proud Anselmo to have asteroid balancing, so it got clogged with metallics. It takes me a few hours of screwing around to refine the design for the Mondor, but I'm pretty satisfied with the result.
Cube!
I've been meaning to try Ultra Cube. The shakedown run to Navis goes along without incident, so I overhaul the thruster design to try for more efficient fuel usage. For now, it's time to set out for Fulgora. Vulcanus, the land of plenty. My mind goblins, which forced me to build compact, were a big help in dealing with its constrictions on space. But I most struggled with automating foundries and big mining drills because prior to having foundries on Vulcanus, all infrastructure is doomed to become obsolete, and I hate that. Getting so far into production as electric motors before being able to actually build a real base is just dumb, so basically, don't bother building everything on site and just import until you can build for real. Importing items in Space Age is a giant hassle though because of the restrictions on platform storage and rocket capacity, and I don't think it's a very controversial take to say that Kovarex went a little too far in a few places regarding platforms and interplanetary logistics. Say what you will about space exploration not so gently choking you with biter meteors and stone byproduct, but interplanetary logistics were not only really intuitive, but really fun there, and the more I play Space Age, I unfortunately find myself wishing I was playing that instead.